The boots of the Zaruthian guards echoed like thunder through the steel corridors. Each impact was a declaration: a prisoner had been taken, a human, one of their scouts. And to General Carves, that was no small trophy, it was leverage. A symbol of submission. A warning to Earth. Juno Rourke stumbled as she was shoved forward, blood from her temple drying against her cheek. Her hands were shackled behind her back, but her eyes? Sharp. Focused. She scanned the passage without turning her head. 4 guards, 2 with plasma rifles, 1 with the keys, and 1 just enjoying the sight of her bruises. They didn't know. Not who she was. Not why she was here. Certainly not what she had already done. The chamber door hissed open. Inside waited General Carves, a towering Zaruthian in ceremonial black armor. Scars crept up his scaled jaw, thick like molten lava turned to stone. His throne-like chair elevated him just enough to look down on everything. Including her. "Human," he began, voice laced with amusement. "You are far from your dirtball planet." Juno didn't answer. Instead, she blinked slowly. Her breathing calm. 1 second longer than normal. Enough to trigger the subdermal link beneath her left eye. A flicker ran through her optic nerve. The interface was active. Carves leaned forward. "Your kind breaks easily. This won't take long." "Not if you keep talking," Juno replied, her voice steady despite the pain burning through her side. That got a chuckle from the guards. Carves did not share it. "You're a scout. A worthless observer. But you crossed into our territory with cloaking tech we've never seen. What was your real mission?" Juno's lip twitched. "Sightseeing." The general struck her. The slap didn't knock her down, it wasn't meant to. It was precision humiliation. A reminder of who held the power. But her smile didn't fade. That unsettled him more than it should have. "Take her to detention cell 9, he growled. "I want her alive. For now." As she was dragged out, her boots subtly scraped against the floor, twice, then once. Code. Her surveillance implant recorded the layout, sounds, and signal pings of every device in the room. Every movement logged. Her pulse barely changed. It wasn't fear, it was data collection. The cell was colder than she expected. Zaruthian architecture valued function over comfort, but this was designed to isolate. Thick walls. No ambient hum from machinery. Soundproof. That mattered. Alone, she slumped to her knees. The shackles clicked open automatically, another detail noted. Probably triggered by the door sensor. Good. Juno exhaled slowly and lay back. The ceiling above was a dull gray, streaked with corrosion. She focused on a single spot and let her neural HUD overlay flicker to life, just a faint shimmer only she could see. Encryption handshake detected. Ship class, Dreadnought Model V-17ZX. Core node access, latent. Good. She wasn't here to escape. She was here to kill the ship. 3 hours passed. Then the door slid open again. "On your feet," barked a voice. She stood, slow, deliberate. Her wrists were raw. She didn't flinch when the guards grabbed her. The room they took her to this time was less theatrical. A gray table, a single chair, no audience. Carves didn't sit this time. He stood, arms crossed, staring like a man trying to understand a weapon he couldn't disarm. "You're calm for a prisoner." Juno tilted her head. "You're nervous for a general." He walked around the table. "Why enter our space? You knew the risks." "That's the thing about maps," she said, locking eyes with him. "The best places aren't on them." He slammed his fist on the table. "What are you hiding?" "Boredom." Another strike. This time her lips split, but she didn't wipe the blood away. She let it sit there, vivid and deliberate. "Tell me your call sign." That made her pause. Not because he asked, but because he didn't know. She stepped forward, and the guards raised their weapons, but she didn't flinch. "Widowmaker." Carves blinked. The room changed. She felt it. He didn't say anything for a full 3 seconds. When he did, it was low. Almost a whisper. "You're lying." She didn't smile this time. "You better hope I am." The guards yanked her out again, harder this time. Her body was weakening, but her system wasn't. Back in her cell, she collapsed and allowed her mind to interface with the microcode she'd embedded in her suit lining. A soft pulse echoed from her collarbone. Transmission initialization, partial uplink to phantom relay. Encryption in progress. 17%. She didn't have long. The ship would reach the Jericho drift line within 36 hours. After that, Earth's nearest colony would be vulnerable to full bombardment. If she failed, millions would die. She adjusted her position on the floor and whispered to the implant in her tongue. "Run silent. Passive scan only. Ping comms every 6 minutes." Confirmed. In the command deck, Carves stared at a hollow map of the ship. A small flicker in the reactor bay caught his attention. A fluctuation. Barely notable. Still, it nagged him. "Recalibrate sensors," he snapped. "There's interference in the lower decks." The technician glanced at the readings. "Could be a shielding echo, sir." "Or sabotage," Carves said. He looked up, eyes narrowing. He thought she was just a scout. He didn't know she was the mission. The lights flickered once in detention cell 9. Just a second. Barely noticeable. But Juno's eyes were already open when it happened. Good. It meant the loop was working. A small part of her mind, isolated and sharpened through years of neural conditioning, tracked the pulses coming from her implant. The Zeruthian systems were primitive in some ways, overbuilt, overly confident in brute redundancy. What they lacked was foresight. She didn't need to break their encryption. She just needed to convince their internal diagnostics that everything was fine while it wasn't. Uplink progress 39%. System latency nominal. Cloak integrity stable. She took a slow breath and sat upright. Her limbs ached, joints stiff from the cold. Her back pressed against the wall, hand discreetly adjusting the thin strip of woven fiber beneath her collarbone. To any Zeruthian scan, it was scar tissue. In truth, it was the remote interface, organic, grown to bond with her nervous system, and designed by human black site engineers with one purpose: to infect enemy code. And the code was taking root. Elsewhere in the ship, things were twitching. Doors delayed their response by milliseconds. Pressure sensors reported false spikes. One crewman burned his hand on a panel that was a full 12 degrees hotter than it should have been, then reopened it to find it back to normal. Tech teams chalked it up to heat cycles and dismissed it. But Carves did not. He stood on the observation deck, arms behind his back, watching his fleet drift in formation. 10 ships, each capable of leveling cities from orbit, formed a crescent around the dreadnought. The human woman, that cursed scout, was still alive in his brig. That was a mistake he hadn't corrected, yet. He turned to the tactical officer. "Are we seeing fluctuations in the comms relays?" "Yes, Commander," the officer said carefully. "But internal diagnostics report green status." Carves's jaw tightened. "Pull her again. This time. I want her mind open. Use whatever it takes." The guards returned, 2 now instead of 4. She noted that instantly. They'd grown complacent, assumed the bruises meant weakness. She let them believe it. As they dragged her down the corridor, her fingers flexed subtly. The implant responded. A silent cascade of errors bloomed in the ship's central AI, harmless, except that they masked the data burst she sent next. Transmission burst 2 sent. Ship topology 68% complete. Engine core schematics uploading. They dropped her into a new room. Smaller. Darker. Less posturing now. A medtech stepped forward. Small hands. Delicate tools. "Not here to heal. This one won't scar," the tech said. "But it'll hurt. Deep tissue memory encoding, classic Terran resistance technique. We burn that out." Juno's voice cracked the silence. "You ever tried this on someone from Site 11? The tech hesitated. She grinned. "Didn't think so." Pain came. It was targeted, strategic. The tools bypassed nerves and poked at memories. Smells, sounds, touch, erased or altered. But Juno didn't scream. She didn't even flinch. Because while they prodded her mind, she was inside their systems. Her left eye glazed over as the feed pulsed data through the optical channel. Hallway layouts, crew schedules, security gaps, mapped in real time. Carves stood over her when it was done. She was on the floor again, breathing shallow, twitching slightly. He knelt beside her. "You're losing," he said, not as a taunt, but as a statement of fact. She turned her head, eyes unfocused. "Am I?" He leaned closer. "Tell me what you're doing. Tell me why you're here." She looked straight at him, blood crusting on her teeth as she whispered. "You ever seen a ship bleed?" Back in her cell, alone again, Juno felt her nerves shaking. The pain was real. The violations were real. But they hadn't broken her, because they never understood her purpose. She wasn't a soldier trying to survive. She was the knife at their throat. Uplink progress 82%. Final burst sequence armed. Suddenly, the walls around her flickered. Lights pulsed in unfamiliar patterns. Her HUD lit up. Intrusion detected. Juno froze. They'd found something. In the command center, Carves stared at a frozen segment of the ship's core monitor. It had glitched, then recovered. But a flicker in the code, one bit too many, caught his attention. "Quarantine sectors 5 through 7. No signals in or out," he ordered. The technician hesitated. "Sir, those are redundant power routing sectors. Cutting them could destabilize." "Do it," he barked. Juno watched as the HUD dimmed. Her transmission window was closing. She had one chance left. Her hand reached toward the collarbone again. This time, she twisted the strip hard, breaking the seal. A jolt of pain shot through her, but it flooded her bloodstream with neural accelerants. Her mind cleared. Heart rate doubled. And her final command activated. Emergency protocol, Widowmaker. A silent burst of code leapt into the system, not through standard channels, but through maintenance subsystems. Hidden, buried in innocuous files like carbon filter reports and life support diagnostics. Her whisper was barely audible. "Begin last upload. Lock the door." In the hallway, 2 guards ran toward cell 9. But the door slammed shut before they reached it, hissing with hydraulic finality. The panel beside it blinked red. "Override it!" one shouted. "I'm trying, it's not responding." Inside, Juno's nose bled freely now. Her skin pale, body trembling. But her eyes were alight. Uplink 100%. Widowmaker protocol armed. Data package sent. Carves stormed toward the brig. Every screen on the ship was glitching. The AI had entered safe mode. Weapons were offline. Engines were in staggered restart cycles. Then the lights across the entire dreadnought dimmed. Backup systems surged online, but slower than usual. Too slow. He slammed his fist into a console. "She's not a scout," he growled. And now he knew. She wasn't captured. She was delivered. Alarms screamed through the bowels of the Shirkatel. Red strobes painted the corridors in a wash of panic as klaxons howled, echoing through the metal like a ship in mourning. General Carves stormed into the command deck, cloak flaring behind him. Every officer turned, silent, afraid to speak. "Report," he barked. The comms chief stood rigid. "Primary systems are in reactive loop mode. Artificial intelligence has gone dark, entered lockdown protocol. Engines are cycling. Tactical grid is blank." Carves's voice dropped, venomous. "Why?" A technician, trembling, raised a trembling hand toward the screen. "It appears someone accessed the maintenance sublayer through environmental subsystems. Then rewrote access permissions." He knew immediately. The human. Not a scout. Not even a prisoner. She was the vector. Juno lay on the cell floor, eyes closed. Her heartbeat thudded heavy, erratic. The neural load was burning her from the inside. Widowmaker protocol wasn't just a data dump, it was a ship-wide cascade. Adaptive, aggressive, self-modifying. She could feel it, like a sixth sense. The dreadnought's guts grinding. Every second, it twisted deeper. Power routed into false loops. Weapon safeties turned on themselves. Doors obeyed phantom commands. The ship's memory, its digital soul, was unraveling. Still, it wasn't over. She needed to finish it. The implant behind her ear crackled softly. Core disruption sequence available. Initiate? She swallowed blood. Not yet. On the upper decks, Carves moved fast. He wasn't a politician like most commanders. He came from war. He understood that hesitation was death. Override control to manual. Lock down environmental nodes. Seal the brig, contain the breach. The room obeyed in a rush of motion. But the screens didn't change. Systems refused direct commands. She's buried something, the lead engineer muttered. It's recursive. Adaptive. Every time we block one process, it forks into 3 more. It's like it's fighting us. Carves turned slowly. Then we stop being polite. Prepared to terminate the human. Juno dragged herself to the wall, used it to brace as she stood. Her legs trembled. Dizziness clouded her vision, but she pushed it aside. She had minutes. The protocol wasn't just sabotage, it was exposure. Every secret the Zeroth wanted to hide, now barreling toward Earth on encrypted bands. Blueprints. Weapon specs. Drive signatures. The Dreadnought's DNA. But it needed one final push, reactor instability. She clenched her jaw and whispered to the air. Access fusion core dampeners. Cycle override. Begin pressure rise. Command received. Safety inhibitors disengaged. The engine room roared as heat surged. Technicians scrambled, shouting. Readings made no sense, heat climbing in sealed systems, plasma valves rerouting autonomously. One officer hit the emergency cutoff. Nothing responded. Then a voice came through the intercom. Not loud. Not gloating. Just calm. This ship never had a future. Carves grabbed the edge of the central console, claws biting into metal. Trace that voice. Kill her now. The image that filled the holoscreen wasn't of the brig. It was the medical bay. Empty. Then another angle, corridor 5. Also empty. What? The engineer paled. Sir, her cell's biometric scanner registered 0 life signs 10 minutes ago. Carves's breath halted. 10 minutes. She wasn't in the brig. She was loose. Juno limped through a service shaft, every inch of her screaming. The pain was no longer sharp. It was distant, numbed by adrenaline and whatever cocktail her implant had dumped into her system. Her hand gripped the railing as the floor vibrated under her boots. Somewhere above, the fusion core hissed, steam and pressure venting wildly. Perfect. She dropped into a narrow maintenance corridor and collapsed against a panel. Final key required for core detonation. Her breath hitched. One final choice. She could disable it, save the ship, remain hidden. Or she could finish what she came for. She pressed her thumb against the panel. Authorization, Widowmaker. Core detonation armed. Countdown, 60 seconds. In the command deck, sirens changed pitch. The tone shifted from warning to finality. A cold voice followed. Core overload in 60 seconds. Manual override disabled. For the first time, Carves didn't speak. He stared at the center screen, at a schematic of his warship, the pride of the Dominion, now pulsing red, its heart seconds from rupture. A symbol blinked beneath it. A human skull. Painted in black over the Zeruthian crest. Her message was clear. Juno sank to the floor in a hallway she didn't recognize. The heat pressed against her skin, distant and rising. She smiled faintly. Not because she would live, she wouldn't. But because she had become what the Zeruth never understood. Not a prisoner. Not a scout. A contagion. A concept wrapped in bone and willpower. Something you couldn't cage. Couldn't beat. Only suffer. Her vision blurred. Darkness crept in. Still, she whispered, "All yours, Earth." And let go. The Shirkatal never exploded. It folded, like a dying star. The core didn't detonate in one violent burst. Instead, Juno's virus overrode the pressure limits and engaged the dampeners just enough to delay the inevitable. The result was surgical, an implosion from within, collapsing layers of the ship into itself in a sequence that was almost quiet. The first to go were the weapons bays. Their failsafes froze mid-response. Plasma vents locked shut. Containment fields failed in silence. The pressure didn't roar, it whispered. A soft compression of metal groaning under its own secrets. By the time Carves reached the escape pod bay, the corridor behind him sealed off, and the floor rippled under his boots. She killed the ship. His adjutant choked beside him. "No," Carves said bitterly. She unveiled it. In Earth's orbit, deep behind the Saturn defense ring, Admiral Harlan stood in his war room, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the data feed pulsing on the main display. Lines of schematics. Weapon grids. AI command structures. Engine calibration matrices, all beamed in fragments, staggered through hundreds of quantum relays, arriving like puzzle pieces from across the void. "Did we confirm the source?" he asked. The communications officer nodded. "It came from a Zeruth dreadnought, ID confirms Shirkatal. But the final packet's timestamp was 31 minutes after the ship went dark on sensors." Harlan leaned forward. "Meaning?" "She kept the core alive just long enough to finish the upload." He looked up, voice quiet now. "Juno?" No one answered. On the charred husk of the Shirkatal, only 3 escape pods made it out. Carves wasn't on any of them. He remained, seated in the disabled command throne, surrounded by silent screens and dying lights. The air was growing thin, heat rising again in waves. Still, he stayed. On one panel, distorted by static, a fragment of the human's final message looped. A simple line of text, in Terran Standard. "Tell the next one not to knock." He stared at it, unblinking. The Widowmaker hadn't fought back. She hadn't resisted, threatened, begged. She had walked in, planted herself like a knife, and left nothing behind but a story no one would want to believe. Aboard Earth's lead cruiser Athena's Wraith, engineers swarmed the command deck, decoding the last of the schematics. "She got everything," one of them whispered. "Shield harmonics. Weapon weaknesses. Even the energy signature that made Zeruth's ships invisible to long-range scans. Their greatest strength, cloaking, was now open source to humanity." The Admiral turned to the AI. "Can we replicate their power systems?" "We can improve them," the AI replied coldly. The room went silent. Earth was no longer playing catch-up. They were ahead. Because one woman had walked into hell and turned it into a signal flare. A week later, a small outpost near the Andari's Drift received a black capsule. No markings. No identification. Just a burn-sealed lock that opened with a single word. Widowmaker. Inside, a chip. Not military grade, not advanced. A memory drive. Private. Personal. Juno Rourke. Age 29. Recon Scout. Medal of Obsidian Veil. Posthumous. A single video was embedded. No uniform. No guns. Just Juno sitting on a crate in a training bunker, smiling without pretense. "If you're watching this, well, I didn't make it back." She glanced down, then up again. "Good. That means it worked." A pause. "I'm not a hero. I just saw what they did to those colonies. Saw how many ships they had. How we were always too late." She exhaled. "So I didn't wait." Another pause. "I volunteered for Widowmaker because no one was asking to be the knife. We keep fighting with gloves on. I thought maybe it was time we stopped hoping they'd understand us." Her smile returned, small, tired. "Don't mourn me. Use what I sent you. And if you ever meet another species who thinks Earth is quiet because we're weak..." She leaned closer to the camera. Remind them what happened when we stopped whispering. The feed ended. The screen dimmed. In the Dominion Senate, panic brewed. There were whispers of a destroyed flagship. Of sabotage. Of a human with no army who gutted a warship from the inside. The Senate leaders demanded answers. The surviving officers from Shukatal had none, only a call sign and a look in their eyes they couldn't explain. Widowmaker. The Zeruth had underestimated Earth once. Now they weren't sure what they'd awakened. Earth built new fleets from what Juno left behind. Faster. Deadlier. Ghost ships modeled on Zeruthian dreadnoughts, but layered with human unpredictability. Each bore no markings, only a single word etched on the inner hull, near the command chair. Widowmaker. Not as a name, but as a warning. Final line. She never needed an army. She just needed to be remembered as the reason they looked twice before picking a fight with Earth again.